scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are
Now that's what I call podcasting.
Which side
Greatest hits.
Yes, 2002.
Yeah, 2002. Wow, music.
Now that's what I call. What is it? What is it called?
I think it's Now That's What I Call Music.
Is that really the whole title?
I think so.
That's so
it's
long.
It's like now really big.
Yes, that's what I call
music. Yeah.
That's a long title
It is kind of crazy.
A very long series of CDs
that everybody had, but no one remembers like buying.
Exactly.
You know? Like,
no, I feel like it just
one.
appeared.
Yeah.
In my it just was one of my possessions all of a sudden.
Like a U2 album on your 2010
No, that's
10 iPhone.
Exactly.
It just appeared. So true. I was actually like I feel like I to this day hold a grudge against U2 for that.
I think everybody does.
Yeah, like we're
rightfully
all just like,
so.
Yeah, like what the fuck? I didn't ask for this.
It was weird.
It was weird.
And I feel like it did exactly the opposite of what they were hoping to do, which was like, oh, everyone will have this, we'll put it on there and everyone will listen to it. And I feel like everybody like specifically didn't listen to it because they were like, I hate this. Why did you do this to me?
And also it's like, I don't know. I don't really know anyone who likes U2. Do you?
No. Like, sorry, but
like, I really don't think
I can't think of a single person that's like, oh yeah, U2.
And no one that's like a U2 stan. You
no,
know? Like,
I don't think they exist.
I don't think so either. I feel like maybe like some dad somewhere is probably like, yeah, U2's all right. But like, there's no one like going to bat for U2.
I don't
you know what
think
I mean?
So. I wouldn't say.
I also wouldn't think so.
Yeah. Is that Bono?
That is Bono, yeah.
Okay.
I think he's like a pretty hardcore Christian guy.
Huh.
I think.
Interesting.
I don't know. But
the Bono lore.
Yeah. The Bono cinematic universe.
The BCU.
Beautiful. This is Remarks.
It is.
It's a podcast.
Yeah.
That's Phoebe.
I'm Phoebe.
And I'm Taylor.
That's Taylor.
Yes.
What's up, guys?
We're back.
Yeah.
We're Adam.
Mm-hmm. We're up.
We're Adam.
Yeah.
Ready to cast, ready to pod.
Ready to rock.
Nothing really new.
I know. I was trying to think if anything particularly crazy, not like in my personal life, but in like the news had happened in between.
I mean,
other than just like the daily horrors,
yeah,
but like
the horrors.
The horrors.
Yeah, no, I can't really think of anything like wild that's been going on. I mean, that's just like out of the ordinary, I guess. Like I know there's been some shit with Steven Crowder, like that fucking right wing.
What has he been doing?
I don't know. He's just been in the Twitter sphere a lot as of late.
Yikes.
Yeah. Hi, Justin.
Hi.
Side character Justin.
Bye. Love you.
Walking through the living room. Anyway, want to take it away?
Yeah. So we mentioned it in our last episode, and we decided to follow through and actually make an episode about it. So this week we are going to be talking about the maybe infamous, I don't know, Kony 2012.
Woo woo
woo woo.
Yeah, I feel like I would talk to someone the other day about it, and they like didn't remember Kony like happening, and I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, no, I don't know what that is, and I was like, maybe it wasn't as like widespread as I thought, you know? I just feel like everyone in my middle school was talking about it.
Same, yeah. I definitely remember it at my high school. Because I graduated in 2013, so I'd have been a junior in high school. Yeah. And I feel like I definitely remember it. And I mean, I'm about to get into it, but, you know, I remember it being like a thing, but I was like, what is this? But yeah, Kony 2012, if you were in high school or college, or I guess like middle school, if you were just like a student in 2012, you probably remember this slogan, and possibly you remember the dramatic video that was being played in schools and universities across the United States. You may also remember there was like red posters being plastered around your town, and maybe, just maybe, you remember the group called Invisible Children.
That one's a big maybe.
Yeah.
But because I feel like no one actually knew what the fuck like anyone was doing with that. Everybody was just like outraged for no reason.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly. Well, and I didn't remember the Invisible Children part until I like looked it up, and I was like, oh yeah.
Which is kind of funny because I feel like that's kind of just how things work now. Like,
yeah,
people
exactly.
just get outraged for no reason, and like no one knows anything about the actual thing.
There's just like a light slogan behind something, and you're just like,
yeah.
And
I
then
feel like Kony started that.
I literally, well, and I'm about to talk about it, but literally, I think this was sort of the start of like the online, like click activism type thing. But how many of us actually remember what any of this was actually about? The campaign popped back into my mind during my research, like I said, for our last episode, and it left me wondering, what the fuck was this? So I remember the group Invisible Children coming to my high school. I remember the red posters with the slogan Kony 2012 being hung up like around my school. And at the time, I'm pretty sure I mistook it for like a presidential campaign. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I just saw the sign and I was like, whatever. Because I think there was like Obama signs everywhere at the same time as well.
Probably.
And then after seeing the Invisible Children van parked outside the school, there was like this big van with like the words Invisible Children across the side. And I asked like some of my friends who had been excused from class to attend the assembly. I was informed that it had something to do with child soldiers in Africa. And that was kind of all anybody could tell me.
Like, you're telling me these fucking kids are transparent? The fuck?
Clearly, the tear-jerking video wasn't able to convey that much info to my classmates. So what the hell was Kony 2012? In 2003, a group of 3 college students traveled to Africa to film a documentary about the war in Darfur. Jason Russell, who had graduated from film school at the University of Southern California, became enraptured by the violence that he saw in northern Uganda and decided to shift his focus to the child soldiers that he witnessed. Jason Russell, Bobby Bailey, and Lauren Poole went on a campaign to spread awareness of the suffering of these children to folks in America. Note that all of these people are white Americans.
Yeah, for sure. Of course.
Probably all 3 of them are from California.
No, definitely.
From, SoCal.
Yeah.
So, no shade to SoCal, but a little bit of shade to SoCal.
A little bit, yeah. No, kind of all of California, a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially LA. LA.
Listen,
I'm fucking coming for you someday. Like, I fucking hate you.
Taylor has an agenda against LA.
I really do. I fucking hate LA.
I get it. I understand. If you've ever had to sit in traffic on the fucking 405 or whatever it is, you understand the vitriol.
Oh yeah. And it's just like kind of I know there's a lot of people there, and therefore it's going to be like a wild city, but it's just like I feel dirty when I'm in LA. I don't know. And there's like, there's like intense poverty next to like $30 smoothies, and you're like, this is weird,
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Which we are definitely starting to get, not to go off, but we are definitely starting. I mean, we're basically there in Salt Lake, right?
Yeah,
it's
we
like,
are also getting there.
There's like homeless people sitting outside of like fucking pulp or whatever, like this like overly priced
juice bar.
It's getting quite LA-y here, I will say, what with all the like Pilates and juice bars and shit like that,
hot yoga places, which again, like nothing necessarily against those things, but it's just it's the attitude of like people from LA.
Yes.
And again, I feel like we're getting it here.
No, we are.
The attitude of people from here. It's like, when they tear down like establishments that have literally been there for like years, and they put up like another overpriced like coffee shop or whatever,
Yeah.
Like, I love a local coffee shop, but do I need to pay $12 for a drink?
Yeah. So the original documentary, called Invisible Children: The Rough Cut, gained some traction after its original screening and went on to be screened at high schools and colleges in the US. And it was after these semi-widespread views of the film that the 3 officially created the nonprofit called Invisible Children, Inc. Donations were collected at these events to support Ugandan children. Oh yeah, and to make more documentaries. And so this was like, they sort of had like something going at this point. Like, they had made the nonprofit, and they were like moving around and doing some protests like in different cities and like honestly around the world too, but it was still pretty like nobody really knew about it, right? This film campaign actually gained enough notoriety that it inspired Fall Out Boy to film their music video for I'm Like a Lawyer with the Way I'm Always Trying to Get You Off. Filmed it in Uganda.
What a name.
I know. Classic Fall Out Boy with like the like 8
Yeah.
fucking word long
Truly.
song titles.
Like the sentence song
Yeah,
titles.
yeah. I miss 2007.
Me too. I miss old Fall Out Boy.
I know. They were so good.
Go back and make like another Under the Cork Tree.
No,
Like,
that
you would cash in on so much nostalgia if Fall Out Boy
Literally.
like just made another like boppin' emo album.
Yeah,
Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. No, that album, close to my heart forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, so they filmed the music video for this very long title of song in Uganda. And they show the lives of originally they were going to like show like the struggle of people in Uganda, but instead they decided to show the lives of 2 Ugandan children who were supposedly in love. Don't really know if that's true, and also like I don't know how young they were, but like if you're children, can you really be in love? I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, and these kids struggle because their village is raided one night by the LRA, I just completely forgot.
Lord's Resistance Army.
Thank you. My brain just erased that.
Yeah.
The Lord's Resistance Army, which is Joseph Kony's group. And the boy is kidnapped. And this, of course, is all manufactured for the music video. This didn't actually happen in front of fucking Fall Out Boy's eyes. Anyway, and then it's like at the end of the music video, he escapes and comes back, whatever. And then at the end of the video, Fall Out Boy provides a link to Invisible Children's website and states that there are still thousands of child soldiers who have been kidnapped and still need to be returned to their families. Which is like great.
Yeah.
But just like the early 2000s were a very wild time. Like,
yeah, the internet was like new still, and like kind of like it was like
a novelty.
Yeah, it was a novelty and like kind of the Wild West. Like you could kind of just put anything on the internet, you know?
Exactly.
And like someone would believe you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. Anyway, I just thought that was like a weird and funny tidbit that Fall Out Boy was like, we're going to do this thing.
I do love the thought of all of that actually happening in front of Fall Out Boy and them just being like, damn.
And they're just like playing their
they're
music
just like
in the
playing their
background.
like songs.
And so public interest in this campaign kind of dwindled after this, and no big moves were really made until 2012 when Invisible Children released a new film and YouTube fucking exploded. So the film, just titled Kony 2012, is about 30 minutes long, and it begins with some like heavy, sad, like heartstring pulling string instrumentals and some like pseudo inspirational voiceover about like how we're all humans and we all matter and like none of us choose our destiny or whatever. And
so true.
So narrated by Jason Russell, who was kind of the spearhead of like all of this Invisible Children shit. The first 5 minutes are just shots of humans like doing human things. And then the rest of the first 5 minutes is just like about his son Gavin being born, and then just like him just like kind of toddling around and like being a child. And it isn't until 5 minutes into the film that anyone African is even mentioned. And I think in the like little kind of, like B-roll shots of humans being humans, there might be one black person. So,
What a microcosm for this whole situation.
It's going great already. Yeah. And so 5 minutes in, we meet Jacob, who is a child from Gulu, Uganda, and who Jason calls his friend, which just does not sit well with me.
Yeah.
And he'll like point to like there's like a picture of this kid on his fridge, and he asks his son, he's like, "Who's this?" And he's like, "It's our friend Jacob." It's all kind of weird. Anyway, So Jacob and his brother were caught and arrested by the LRA, who we don't really learn about like what even that is until like 9-ish minutes into the documentary, well after Jacob's story. And like the first little bit of Jacob's story is just kind of shots with him hanging out with Jason. They like went to SeaWorld or something. It's just him kind of being friends with this African kid.
Yeah.
And without really describing what's going on in the film, or without really describing like what's going on with this whole like LRA thing, the film shows rooms filled with children who have all been kidnapped by the rebels, as Jacob calls them. They're like all just like laying on the floor of this room, like sleeping, I think. And it just like kind of shows shots of like sad life in Uganda. And Jacob says that when his brother tried to escape from the LRA, they killed him right in front of Jacob. And it's like a really horrible, harrowing.
Absolutely awful.
Jacob says, he's like speaking with Jason, and Jacob says that it's better when the LRA does kill you, because then you don't have to worry about what the future is going to look like and whether or not you have to continue to be on the run. And in this devastating scene, Jacob is crying over his dead brother, and Jason promises that he will do everything in his power, quote, to stop them. And his voiceover then says something to the likes of, like, he's like, I didn't know what I was going to do at that time when I made that promise to Jacob until now. And he's literally referring to the documentary.
That's like his big like thing that he's doing.
Yeah. Which, you know, promising a child who's crying over his brother who was killed by like an extremist organization that you're like, we're going to do everything to stop them. It's just like, thank you, white man. Like,
it is white.
You literally are sitting there making an empty promise to him because he said it right there. He's like, I didn't even know what I meant by that.
Yeah.
Anyway. And so in possibly the most cringeworthy portion of the documentary, Jason explains to his like 5 or so year old son who Kony is and what he does. So he sits Gavin down in front of this white background and he shows him a picture of Kony and he asks him like, who is this guy? And he's like, I don't know. And so he explains to him who this is. And he asks Jason asks Gavin what he thinks his dad's job is. And Gavin says, stopping bad guys. No, Gavin, your dad's job is to record sad things happening in African countries and make it into a slacktivism documentary.
Oh yeah, it's like he's a movie maker.
Yeah, but it's like very telling that that's what his kid believes is his job. Yeah. Anyway, and then so Jason hands Gavin like a picture of Kony and he's like, this is Kony, and he does, you know, he kidnaps these kids and he forces them to be soldiers and all these things. And this kid who's like 5 is very confused by all of this. And he asks him what he thinks about it. And he says, that's sad. And then Jason also asks Gavin what he thinks they should do about Kony. And Gavin says, stop him, in his little mumbled baby talk.
Yeah.
So it's
like weird. I feel like they're definitely trying to like obviously like most videos and like campaigns like this are obviously trying to get like emotional reactions out of you. But like, I just feel like his is really blatant.
Yes.
Like he has like his son there, like he's talking to his son about like after this like harrowing story about a child getting murdered. Like it's just very like, I don't know. It seems weird. Like it's just like very transparently like, oh, I'm trying to make you like feel sad.
Yes.
So you'll give money to this cause.
Yes.
Almost.
And the whole point behind it was that, you know, he was unaware of this problem until he went to Africa. Recorded these things happening and then brings it back to the United States because he's like, nothing is being done about this because the whole Western world doesn't know about it. And as I'll get into later, like there was programs set up in Uganda and people doing things in Uganda. But, you know, it's this whole thing of like, well, if Americans don't know about it, then it's not real.
Have some about that. So
great.
Yeah.
And so Jason says that he and his team approached U.S. politicians years ago to do something about Kony, but he claims that none of them would help him because it wasn't in U.S. interest, because like they weren't being attacked or there was no like real financial reason for the U.S. to get involved. And so after years of protesting from invisible children and these different people that they had recruited, in 2011, Barack Obama agreed to send a small number of troops over to Central Africa to help in the efforts against the LRA. But Kony continued to remain at large. And so this, the video tells you, is where you come in. The aim of Invisible Children, Inc. was to make Kony famous. They wanted his name and his face plastered everywhere so that the U.S. government would have no choice but to act. And you, the viewer, could help with this. And so the plan was to spread posters, stickers, yard signs, etc. all over your city to, like, quote-unquote, make Kony famous.
Yeah.
And for just a few dollars a month, donated to Invisible Children, you would receive this action kit.
Whoa.
Which was filled with 2 bracelets, and the bracelets are like a string, and then there's like a little, like, kind of like a washer in the middle that says Kony on it. And it's like, I don't know. It's just kind of weird because it's like, you're kind of just like sporting this warlord's name. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then there's like some posters in there. There's some stickers in there. And then I think there's also like a shirt. Again, and all of these are just like, it looks like a political campaign poster. And we'll post something. We'll post, you know, some on the Instagram. But it looks like a political campaign poster that just says Kony 2012. And then in smaller letters, Invisible Children. And then the shirt, I think, has like a picture of his face on it or something.
Yeah. Honestly, if any of you have a Kony 2012 action kit,
yes,
send it to us.
Please. Yes.
I honestly, I don't know that we're necessarily a big enough podcast to have like a P.O. box yet, but we could get a P.O. box. You could send it to us or do something. And we'll get it to us somehow, and we'll review the fucking Kony 2012 action.
Or at least send us pictures or something.
Please, yes, if you have a shirt or anything.
Yeah, and if you remember this whole like campaign happening at your high school or college or whatever, please leave us a comment and just like tell us what your experience was and if you like knew what the fuck they were talking about when the like assembly was going on, because
Truly.
I'm very curious about everybody's experience with this. Anywho, so you receive this action kit. It's filled with like Kony swag. And the next call to action in this video is to quote unquote cover the night. And so this was Invisible Children's big protest that they had planned for April 20th, 2012. And all of the participants in this Kony 2012 campaign were supposed to quote like gather at night and blanket their city in all the Kony swag that they had gotten in their little action kit. And so basically like at the end of the night you would like get together, or in the middle of the night on April 20th you would like all go out and you would plaster these posters everywhere so that like US senators and you know like lawmakers and everything would have no choice but to like you can't ignore this name everywhere.
Why wouldn't you do it during the day then?
In the video, I mean, right? In the video, it's like everyone else will be sleeping, but we'll be up, like spreading the word, and everyone on Saturday morning will awaken to Kony's name and face all over their cities. Whatever. It was like very much trying to be this like
edgy,
activism, edgy, yeah.
And so, like, wouldn't you make like more of a like splash if you did it like during the day?
I
don't know.
Guess
I don't
so.
know.
I don't even know. Whatever. And so at the end of the video, there are it says there are 3 things that you can do right now. Are you ready for these 3 things, Taylor?
What can I do?
This is what you can do to help children that are being kidnapped and forced into becoming child soldiers.
Yes.
Number 1, sign the pledge.
Oh.
You can go online to like Invisible Children, whatever, and sign this little pledge that they have saying that you
like a petition?
Want to stop Kony. It's a pledge.
Oh,
don't be confused. It is not a petition, which would be slightly more effective, only slightly. It is a pledge saying I will put up posters in my city.
Yeah, like a promise, like a
yes, that's
I
exactly.
Promise I'll do it.
I'll do it. That's what you're saying.
Cool.
Number 2. Get the bracelet and action kit.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Because
money. And wear a bracelet with the name of a horrible warlord. Who's kidnapping children. Yeah. Number 3, donate a few dollars a month to the Invisible Children charity.
Obviously, yeah.
And that's what you can do to help these kids.
Woo, yeah.
That's what this 30-minute inspirational video, you know, this is the climax of the inspirational video. Yeah. And after this break, we will find out how did this all go?
How did it?
How did Cover the Night go?
No. Spoiler alert, I guess, because I'm really intrigued.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and
we're back.
Phoebe,
that's crazy that you're wanted in 46 states.
Yeah, you know, that's what you get for robbing a liquor store for a 40.
Buying the 40.
Buying the 40
and then
going and robbing a liquor store back for the money and then going to a different one and then buying another 40.
Yeah. True. It's really just like the advanced version of like the coin or like the string on the coin trick in like a vending machine, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a little bit more like violent.
Yeah.
True.
Just because it's like kind of more fun. This is like extreme bar hopping.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. It's like how the EPA has a warrant out for my arrest because of all the trash that I burn in my front yard. All the plastic, Yeah, all the plastic that I just light on fire.
But what they're misunderstanding, their scientists are wrong.
Oh, yeah, of
I'm
course.
sorry. I watched the YouTube video called The Plastic Demic.
Yeah, the plastemic.
And the scientists, they're shutting down the real scientists who definitely haven't been, like disbarred from science or whatever.
And like paid by like right-wing organizations. Yeah.
Definitely not. And, they're telling the truth about like plastic is what's going to fill our ozone layer back in.
That's what I'm saying.
The smoke from the plastic.
Exactly.
The fumes.
Like if you get enough plastic in the air, it basically makes a
closes
plastic dome over the earth.
Exactly.
Which then will help with carbon and with like the greenhouse effect probably.
Thus keeping us safer.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's definitely.
Yeah. And then it's like a little shield from, like asteroids and stuff too.
Exactly. Then you have like a shield.
We don't want to have like a repeat of the dinosaurs.
True. Yeah.
So you're really just trying to help like protect us from like space debris.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. No.
From the intergalactic wars.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the intergalactic wars that are coming.
Yeah.
When Elon Musk launches a rocket into space and it hits like an alien spacecraft or something.
Right.
And they want to come wipe us out.
Yeah.
Real war of the worlds type beat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Leave it to Elon Musk though to like accidentally start a war with an alien race.
He truly would, yeah.
Oh God, that man.
Yeah. Anyway.
So we had the video. They played it at a bunch of high schools. It was like nobody still, even after watching the video, knew what it was about. And so they called to do this protest called Cover the Night. And so what actually became of these Cover the Night protests was Kony actually arrested in 2012, like the video claimed he would be. In this video, they were like, 2012, Kony, this is the year Kony will be arrested. So the Cover the Night's protest turned into more of like a Sprinkle the Night, with the turnout being very slim.
Yeah.
Quote, the turnout for the event worldwide was much smaller than initially expected, with no organized spots officially announced and many fewer people attending than had pledged to attend. And this is a tweet from Invisible Children saying, there is no official meetup as we are asking people to act locally with their friends and family in their neighborhoods. And so with over 50,000 people signing up and doing the pledge and buying these, what did they fucking call them? Action kits. Very few people actually ended up participating in these Cover the Night protests.
Of course.
And so one gathering in Vancouver had only 17 people. Another in Brisbane had fewer than 50. In Kelowna, British Columbia, several signs and posters were put up. And there were 2 large banners that were placed on like one and the other side of this overpass of like a freeway or whatever. And in Canberra, there was a few Facebook groups that had a gathering of maybe 2 or 3 people each. And the most turnout was in Phoenix. About 200 posters were put up by college students and other young people in like their teens and 20s. And then there was some like chalk and stencil. And so the lack of organization and direction by Invisible Children caused these protests to largely fail. And the simplification of the propaganda made the overall statement confusing and ineffective. Kony may have become famous for like a few months in 2012, but how many people actually knew what he was famous for? How many people like me passed by a few Kony 2012 posters on the street and mistook it for a political campaign, or just overlooked them entirely because people's yards were filled with that kind of shit around this time? And so this video, the Kony 2012 documentary, received a lot of criticism. Jason and his team were labeled as slacktivists and were criticized for having a white savior complex, which they definitely did.
Yeah.
If you watch this video, it's still around. It's like, oh my God, the amount of rolling my eyes that happened. The video was also criticized for being inaccurate. Michael Wilkerson, who is a journalist who has done years of work in Uganda, responded to the video, dispelling some of the misinformation spread in the video. Quote, it would be great to get rid of Kony. He and his forces have left abductions and mass murder in their wake for over 20 years. But let's get 2 things straight. 1, Joseph Kony is not in Uganda and hasn't been for 6 years. 2, the LRA now numbers at most in the hundreds, and while it is still causing immense suffering, it is unclear how millions of well-meaning but misinformed people are going to help deal with the more complicated reality. And he goes on to list some more points. The LRA is not in Uganda, but now operates in the DRC, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic. In October last year, which this was 2011, as I said, Obama authorized the deployment of 100 U.S. Army advisors to help the Ugandan military track down Kony, with no results disclosed to date. The LRA is much smaller than previously thought. It does not have 30,000 or 60,000 child soldiers. The figure of 30,000 refers to the total number of children abducted by the LRA over nearly 30 years. And it also... Michael also goes on to make the point that there was currently no threat to remove the U.S. advisors who were working with the Ugandan government to track down the army, which is what in the video they had said this was kind of the reason why they were doing this new campaign in 2012. Victor Ochen, founder and director of Ugandan rehabilitation NGO called Ayinet, said that the idea of making Kony famous was honestly offensive, and he said pointedly, I might add, quote, "How do you think Americans would have reacted if people in another country wore Osama bin Laden t-shirts?" And I think that's a pretty fantastic fucking way to put this.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea was like, this warlord should be as famous as, you know, these celebrities that we have and everything, which I understand the point, but yeah, it's pretty offensive, especially when the propaganda that you're spreading is so unclear what the fuck you're actually talking about.
Exactly.
And it looks like people are in support of this guy. They're walking around wearing a shirt that honestly looks like you're trying to elect him for president. It says Kony 2012 with his face on it. It looks just like the Obama campaign.
Which is so interesting with more that I'll get into. Because like he wants to kind of be of Uganda, like the leader. So, yeah.
The video was criticized for oversimplifying the issue, for victimizing African people once again, as kind of has always been done. Africa is always looked at as this very, like, they cannot help themselves. And even though several countries in Africa are, like, thriving.
Oh, yeah.
The video was criticized for basically being trauma porn and for using footage that the subjects of the film had not consented to having spread.
I love just America. Like, anytime there's, like, a culture that's different or, like, lives in a different way, like, doesn't have, like, the immense luxury that we have.
Right.
People are like, they must be miserable there.
Exactly.
I can't and it's like, yeah, there are a lot of people who are suffering in Africa. Don't get me wrong. But, like, making them like America isn't the way to fix it.
No.
You know?
And it's not even luxury. It's, like, overproduction that we have here.
We have
like, suffering that we can equate, you know?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, like we were just saying, walk around downtown and you see people who are living on the street, like, starving and suffering and who are sick. And, like, there are plenty of other countries, including countries in Africa, that look at America and they're like, Jesus Christ.
You ever seen the German advertisement for, like, hungry children in America?
Jesus,
it's
no.
actually hilarious. I'll see if I can pull it up on the break. But it's so, look up just go to YouTube and look up, like, German feed American children ad or whatever, and it's like literally like one of, like, the commercials we would see,
like,
about
UNICEF
like
type,
like about African children here, about American, like, hunger.
Right. Well, and it's, I mean, again, it's like, it's just it's such a redirection too of us to, like, not look at the fact that we're doing the exact same types of things.
It's middle class, like, like you were saying, suffering porn, you know?
Yeah,
like, people who are middle class and don't realize or don't like to think about how much suffering we have here in their little bubble. And they're like, well, oh no, there's people who don't have running water and dishwashers. Like, it's like, you know, it's just,
Yeah. When the film was screened in Uganda, viewers actually threw rocks at the screen and booed.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. 2 weeks after the blow-up of the video, Jason Russell was seen wandering down the streets of San Diego naked and supposedly having some sort of, like, mental breakdown, which is sad, and I don't know what was really going on there. I couldn't find, like, a lot of reporting on that. I think it was sort of, like, the vitriol that he received and just, like, the pressure of now being, like, the face of this thing probably got to him. But, you know, that's just an interesting other piece of this.
Yeah, and, like, that is sad, but it's, and I'm not even justifying, like, I don't think you should send people death threats for any reason.
No.
And, like, be upset, but, like, it is hard because it's like, man, like, you made, like, a serious issue into, like, your college film student project.
Exactly.
You know? Like,
exactly.
It's like a hard, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, he does need to, like, suffer
the consequences,
yeah,
I guess,
and, like,
maybe not death threats and maybe not like having a mental breakdown, but
yeah. And so as Taylor's going to get into, the LRA has been an actual problem for Uganda and several other African countries. They have kidnapped children. They have forced them to be soldiers. They have sold them into sex slavery, and they have murdered people. Joseph Kony is an actual monster. He claims that he's like a prophet. He convinces people to follow them. But, you know, the politics of Uganda and any other African country are long and complicated, just like any other nation. And the United States has a serious problem with oversimplifying things or with painting Africa as like one giant helpless country. Like, I feel like so many times when you're looking at an issue that's happening in a specific African country, it's just like, Africa, all of Africa is suffering in this way. Again, as we said, even though there's countries that are like doing great and have like plenty of resources, there are also other countries that don't.
Well, no one ever talks about like the reason why.
Exactly.
Which is frustrating. It's like it's colonialism.
Yes.
Like we fucked like
yes.
white people fucked over Africa. Like,
right.
The reason why there's so intense poverty is because we like fucked them over.
And that's the other part of this too, is that it's like this. It's this suffering or this trauma porn of like crying over an issue that not like us now inflicted, but it is propagated by us continuing to do this and going to like film these things. I mean, it's just like Queen Elizabeth going to Africa and being like, hello everyone, and her jewels, and then like piecing out, you know.
Fuck the Queen.
I know. Fuck that. She's dead, so thank God. So the Kony 2012 campaign was just another example of rallying behind a seemingly like easy to support cause. Just like we saw in 2020, there was that like a sex trafficking of children thing that like conservatives could rally behind, because nobody's gonna like, you can't be mad about anybody supporting that cause, right? This was like spreading misinformation as if it were fact, and replacing clicks with activism. And as we were saying earlier, Kony 2012, I think, was one of the many beginnings to this like online world of clicking share equals making a change. You can look at like the ice bucket challenge, the black square thing, the Instagram infographics, as I've yelled about multiple times. Like, we've seen it all. And this is kind of what now a lot of the world's activism has turned into, is just like, I can press share and I have like made a change.
Yeah.
And in the wake of spreading the face and the name of a warlord and human trafficker all over the United States, what sort of protections did we see in place for his victims? What kind of support did these children or their families get? What about the groups that already existed in Uganda who were working to fight against this? Were they all looked over in the way of watching a 30-minute video made by a sad white man? Or, you know...
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, and like you were saying, Invisible Children was started by like a bunch of white people.
Yes.
It's like, you would think too, like conservatives would want like the Ugandan people to like work their own issues out. Like,
exactly.
Like what makes these three white guys like in any way like better suited than like these actual organizations in Uganda and the actual Ugandan government that is trying to like stop this. You know?
And how would you, this guy who's been to Africa like 3 times, all of a sudden be the expert of this like extremely intense and violent and complicated issue that like is rooted in serious politics of Uganda and other countries.
Like, I don't know, it's like insulting to like people who actually do like conflict journalism. Like,
no, exactly.
And I'll get into this more, but there is like a dude who, you know, had like one of the only interviews with Joseph Kony, who was like in Africa for years and like was like waiting around in like in tiny African village like multiple days at a time, traveling from place to place to like try to set up this interview and like do this reporting. And it's like you went there on like basically what's a short-term mission trip.
That's exactly.
And you're like, I'm the expert and can make a 30-minute documentary on Kony. It's like it's insulting to the Ugandan government, the Ugandan people, and like people who are actually out there doing like conflict journalism.
Exactly.
Like,
well, there was that Michael Wilkerson guy who was like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And no, and it's true. It's like there are people that are actually doing effective journalism in a way that isn't exploitative of these people. They're experiencing these conflicts and trying to report on it in a way that's like accurate and not suffering porn. And then this fucking guy comes in, creates a hashtag out of it, and the whole world is like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's It's frustrating, and it might have been Michael Wilkerson who did the interview. I'll have to check, honestly.
But take it away. Give us some deets, Taylor.
Word. I will take it away after a quick break.
Anyway.
Break time. No ad here. We're back.
Heyo.
Yeah, back and Adam, ready to go. I'm going to be taking over the little actual thing.
Yeah, lay down some real facts for us. Tell us what
all facts, no printer, baby.
By the way, look at this little birdie out the window. I don't know if you can see, but there's just like a little finch.
Oh yeah,
I think I do see him. Oh my god! Also today, nice, cute side note before we get into probably some like really sad stuff.
Yeah.
I was at this like sweet like office building thing, you know, where they have like a bunch of little different like businesses, and there's like a pond in the middle. Oh my god, there was a mommy and a daddy duck with like 10 babies, and I just sat and I watched them for like 10 minutes. It was the most precious thing in my life.
So cute.
They were just all swimming around, and one of them was like chasing after little flies trying to eat them. I wanted to cry.
Happy and like content with their lives.
Yeah, they just were like living like a peaceful, beautiful life, and I was like,
so
to be one of these ducks right now.
Truly,
I feel like oh my god, and the baby, there was like 6 of them like in this little pile just sleeping together. Oh my god, it was amazing.
Ducks are so cute.
I fucking love ducks. They're
Same.
probably my favorite animal.
Definitely my favorite bird for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so as per the Remarks tradition, I'm going to be doing the history of
yes, we love it.
The one and only Joseph Kony and his group that we'll get into. So, it is suspected that Joe Co, as I took to calling him, was born in 1961 in northern Uganda in a village called Odek. He is a member of the Acholi people, Acholi, and is either the youngest or the second youngest of his siblings. Obviously, not a lot of record keeping going on around this time, especially in Uganda. So there's a lot of facts that are a little murky, but this is what's gathered from various resources. It seems as though growing up, reports of Kony were that he got along with his siblings, but he was quick to resort to violence. He grew up with a Catholic father and an Anglican mother. This will come into play a little bit later in his warlord days. He never finished school and was reported to drop out at the age of 15, which again is pretty par for the course in more impoverished areas of Africa and just impoverished countries in general. To get to the roots of Kony's motivations, we have to go back a little bit further. The National Resistance Movement was a party led by Yoweri Museveni, and successfully overthrew the previous government of Uganda in 1986. Their stated goals were to restore political stability and law and order, as well as constitutionalism in Uganda. This sounds nice on the surface, but as with most governments, the NRM, as it was called, National Resistance Movement, overextended its power, doing much of the same authoritarian acts as the previous government, and passing laws that would hinder free speech and criticism of the party, which isn't too crazy, to be honest, especially in like a more turbulent situation to have some. But like in general, it does seem that the NRM isn't like the worst either. I don't know. It's hard to like find the nuance of everything. Sure. Especially when you're covering things so quickly.
I feel like this is a situation that you see a lot. Like the same thing happened in France with like the French Revolution and in like Russia. Like
exactly.
It's a pretty classic thing when governments get overthrown.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, so the National Resistance Army used guerrilla tactics to overthrow the government and seems to have ruled the country with somewhat of an iron fist. But again, I don't think that it was like quite as bad as the previous government. So, you know, again, there's here and there, like give and take on these things.
Sure.
So there is a lot of history here that I simply just do not have the time to dive into, nor the time to fully discuss for our purposes here. But just know that some folks were not satisfied with the NRM's governing of the country. The overthrowing of the previous government by the NRA resulted in a massive looting and livestock, raping and pillaging of villages, which again, if you're in like a guerrilla war and really just any kind of war, isn't uncommon. It's not good by any means, but it's, again, pretty common during most wars. These actions are supposedly what sparked Joseph Kony to form the LRA, the Lord's Resistance Army. The insurgencies of the LRA caused the NRA to form concentration camps that held reportedly 2 million people and sparked national outrage, as well as burning down people's homes and villages. So kind of basically like an all-out war, because you did have the LRA going through and pillaging as well. NRA, according to these sources, was also like opening concentration camps and putting LRA child soldiers there. And just, again, kind of a back and forth.
Right.
The LRA is where we get the infamous child soldiers that somewhat sparked the Kony controversy in the first place, and it was reported that they would recruit children to fight for them. The number of children forced to fight is a contentious figure, though, from what I've gathered. As Phoebe was saying, oftentimes the 30,000 number is more like the overall amount of children, not like 30,000 currently active.
Right, because it's been like they were there and some escaped, or some have died, or some have like been let go, or it's like.
And then also it's like there is a point where there are no longer children and they are just men who are soldiers.
They've like grown up now.
Yeah,
and that was definitely something in the video. It made it seem like there's this like Joseph Kony standing there with 30,000 little children behind him.
Exactly. In 2008, the Ugandan military invaded the DRC with the intention of finding the LRA in operation. That's the Democratic Republic of Congo. With the intention of finding the LRA in Operation Lightning Thunder was the name of it, which kind of a hardcore name, dude. The LRA is also not free of war crime accusations. Alongside the child soldier angle, it is also alleged that the LRA would rape young girls and abduct them to serve as sex slaves. So, which again, I don't think is uncommon for wars, but, you know, I feel like as you learn more about wars and countries and armies, you kind of realize that, like, no one is good in wars.
No, and there is no, like, rules of war, actually.
No, yeah.
And best believe the Americans are guilty of that shit as well.
Yeah, no one's good in a war, absolutely.
No.
All of them do war crimes. I think there's the idea of a war in general is like a crime against humanity. So,
Right.
especially when there's fucking asshole politicians who like order poor people to go fight for them.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole thing. Anyway, the goals of the LRA have shifted as the years have passed. Initially, the goals were to overthrow the NRA and kind of set up like a new order almost. But they have morphed into kind of an Akoli nationalism to purify its people, as well as turning Uganda into a theocracy.
Yes.
So wanting God to be like, you know, the head of government and things like that, which, you know, having sex slaves really screams Christianity, I would say.
Yeah. And it's like this whole idea of like God has appointed the leader.
Exactly. Like, you know, and again, like if Joseph Kony was to say become the president of Uganda or, you know, the leader of Uganda, it would be like, oh, well, God speaks to him.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
Here's a quote from a Wikipedia article about good old Joe Co. Kony proclaims himself as the spokesperson of God and a spirit medium, and claims he is visited by a multinational host of 13 spirits, including a Chinese phantom. Ideologically, the group is a syncretic mix of mysticism, Akoli nationalism, and heterodox Christian fundamentalism, and claims to be establishing a theocratic state because of the Ten Commandments and local Akoli tradition. So it's kind of an interesting mix too, because there is like as they were saying, like kind of some mysticism, which comes from, you know, like African culture and just different religions influencing different religions all around everywhere. But like,
and
so
like the Christian colonialism of Africa. And then their like weird influence on this. Yeah.
And it's very interesting because I haven't been to Africa, but I have been to Haiti. And like, you know, I feel like there's a lot of like like everybody knows about like the voodoo in Haiti, you know, like that's like a big thing. But like also like you'll walk down the street and you'll see like just posters with like Jesus like put all over them, you know, like it's very like it's an eclectic mix of like, again, like more like spiritual and mystic traditions and like Christianity from colonialism.
Yeah,
so
it's the same thing in Mexico where there's like these more like traditional beliefs and then like intense Catholicism because, again, the colonialism of the Catholics.
Yeah, so it's interesting. In October of 2006, arrest warrants were placed for 5 LRA members, and included in them was Kony. He then went on to do one of the few interviews that has ever been done with a UN humanitarian affairs correspondent. In the interview with Kony and his top LRA followers, many of them said that they believed that Kony could communicate with spirits and could not die. Interestingly enough, like they were interviewing this guy and he was like, do you think, like the interviewer, the journalist was like, if I shot Kony right now, would he die? And the guy was like, no.
Huh.
Yeah, so like
which is also like this whole other like kind of cult aspect to it as well.
And again, a lot of these people were children when they were like abducted,
right?
So they've been, you know, programmed their whole lives. Many of the men interviewed in the little video were abducted as children and brainwashed into thinking that what they were fighting for was the will of God. Many speak highly of Joseph Kony, even though he ripped their childhoods from them. Once the journalist met Kony himself, he asked the warlord to describe himself, and Kony responded that he was a freedom fighter. When the warlord was pressed about pictures of people with their ears and their lips cut off, which was an LRA signature, he claimed that the Ugandan government created those photos as propaganda against him, which is not true.
Right.
I mean, I guess unless there's this huge conspiracy by the Ugandan government, which doesn't seem to be the case. He also denied abducting children and the raping and enslavement of young girls, who would later testify against him and say that, yes, he did this. So, again, I don't know that Joseph Kony, the warlord, is very credible.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a whole story about a woman who was abducted and then became like she got like her master's degree and became like a diplomat for different countries, like a peace diplomat. Yeah, it's amazing. When asked what he was actually fighting for, he stated he wanted the people of Uganda to be free and to be able to elect their own leader, which I think is a little ironic.
Because that's like, the exact opposite of theocracy.
Exactly. That's what he said, though. Then when pressed about his 33 accusations of war crimes, he simply says that he is not guilty.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, it was an interesting interview to watch, but like not, I mean, because they tried to make, in this very like video that I watched, like they were trying to make like peace talks and things like that, but nothing's really ever come of, of the peace talks because, again, you're dealing with a warlord.
Right.
In November of 2013, Kony was reported to have fled to eastern Car town or CAR town of Nzoka, and was also reportedly in poor health. Kony and his followers, as stated before, believed he was possessed by spirits, which has led to him telling his soldiers and followers some interesting beliefs. Kony supposedly told his soldiers to draw a cross on their chest in oil to protect themselves from bullets. He was also a big proponent of polygamy and had 60 wives and 42 children. And again, I don't know how much of this is necessarily true.
Right.
Because he's like, again, I think as you were saying, like he's almost like a mythical figure in a way. Like,
yeah, he's got like he's like kind of thought to be this sort of like prophet. Like, yeah, like we were saying, there's this weird sort of like cult aspect to it that is like,
yeah.
I mean, you know, you'll see this kind of thing in any sort of cult.
These are just like, you know, some of these could be total rumors about him. Like, there's really not a whole lot of way of like confirming a lot of this stuff too. Like, but this is just, again, like what's generally believed. He justifies all of his war crimes by saying that he was fighting for the 10 Commandments and stated that his violence was ordered by not himself or the LRA, but by God himself. when asked to do communications with the previous government leaders, or I guess I should say the government leaders that controlled the country, not the previous one. Kony stated that he would communicate with the leader through the Holy Spirit and not the telephone, which leads into kind of one of the genius things about Joseph Kony is that he was really untraceable. Like he did not use phones or vehicles, things like that. Like he was very, that's why he was so good at evading capture.
Yeah, he was at large for 20 plus years.
The Ugandan government actually did capture Kony at some point in the 80s and eventually released him in 1992 because the LRA was so small that they were no longer seen as a threat to the Ugandan government. The Ugandan military nonetheless have tried to assassinate him multiple times, as well as sending troops into surrounding countries to find the LRA hideouts. Which again, that I'm not even sure about if the Ugandan government actually captured him or not. Again, there were reports that they did, and he was released in 1992. So I don't know if it was because he got out because he maybe bribed someone, or there was maybe he was almost captured. Whatever the case is, though, the LRA has shrunk significantly.
Yeah.
But they were definitely into the 90s still sending troops over into the hideouts in the DRC and Sudan. Post 9/11, the U.S. government classified the LRA as a terrorist group and Kony himself as an international terrorist. No U.S. troops were directly involved, but U.S. advisors, kind of like you were saying, provided equipment to fuel the Ugandan military efforts against the LRA. I'm sure there were some troops that were sent over to help with operations and things, but it doesn't we invaded or sent massive support.
Yeah, it was very small, and it was there was no the U.S. wasn't doing combat or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. The offensive did drive Kony from his jungle camp, where he was camped out, but he was not captured. 100 children were rescued, though, so that's cool. There was 100 children at this specific jungle camp. In 2011, President Barack Obama continued the effort, as you were saying, to eliminate the LRA. In 2013, a $5 million bounty was placed on Kony's head by the U.S. State Department, but to no avail. In the year 2000, the Ugandan government offered an amnesty program that allowed 13,000 LRA soldiers to lay down their arms and return home. This practically eliminated the war effort. However, the group can still be dangerous, and it's foolish to think that they aren't still causing mayhem because they are so small. Because they're still, reports have it a couple hundred people or so, 100 to 200 in the group still, at least at this time. So they could definitely still be dangerous, but it was said that the careful practices of Kony and the remaining LRA forces were so good at evading detection because the methods they used to conceal themselves. They never used phones or vehicles, opting to travel large distances by foot, so that they are not as easy to track down. To close us out today, here's a quote from the U.S. State Department told to Fox News about the continuing situation with Joseph Kony and what would happen if he was caught or killed. And I know this is Fox News, but I think it was a while ago, so
right.
They weren't quite as
Fox and Friends as they are now.
Yeah, terrible as they were now. At this point, it wouldn't make much of a practical difference as the LRA has not claimed any major operations since 2010. And is no longer under a centralized command. It would, however, come across as a moral victory against one of the greatest villains of the region, added Lipowski of the Counter-Extremist Project. Kony's death or capture would allow the U.S. to declare mission accomplished resolutely.
When I think that's a similar feeling of what we did with Bin Laden, where it was
exactly.
Oh, we killed him. So we can say, we did it.
We got him. Freedom won, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But
what did it actually do? You
right.
know? Because, ISIS flared up, not even, around the same time,
Well, and it's just and then you also look at our invasion of Afghanistan, and then we left, and then the Taliban took over, and it's our involvement in anything is very much like, what can we check off of the list?
Exactly. And I mean, it's like we say it all the time, but like, it's just like, what can give us a blank check to go and invade more countries and spread capitalism? Like, because when you're in a war with like an idea, like the war on communism or the war on terror, like, you can't really win by just killing someone.
Exactly.
You know? Like, it's like, again, it's an ideology. Like, there's always going to be people who like come up to fight for it, you know?
Right.
And that's not even to say that like we should have a war on communism or anything like that, but like, it's just like you can't win a war against an idea.
Exactly.
So
war on drugs. Like,
exactly.
What is that?
Like, how do you fight cocaine? You know, like, put them up.
Me with the boxing gloves, just punching an 8-ball of coke.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the actual story of Kony. Again, it's a little murky on some of the details, but he was a warlord. He did exist.
Yeah.
He did abduct children.
He did do the things that were said, but it was just like what we in the U.S. accomplished was effectively nothing.
Yeah. And it was like a little misplaced and like late on to the party. Like,
I mean, it was literally factually late.
Yeah.
By the time that the story was released in 2012 here, Kony hadn't been in Uganda since like 2006.
Exactly.
And so, all of this to be said, like there is currently in Sudan, there's like some very intense shit going on and people are needed to be evacuated and it's not happening and it's extremely scary. And like I think that we do need to be educating ourselves, but like probably not with a dramatic video from like a guy who graduated from University of Southern California and wanted to go like make a documentary. Like I think that we can look at actual conflict journalists or like, I don't know, journalists who actually live in Sudan or Uganda or wherever, who are reporting on the things that are happening in their own countries. Like look at CNN, look at BBC, look at like
any of them.
Yeah, actual news sources who are reporting the facts and aren't doing it in a arms of the angels kind of way.
And you know, and I think that's like the most depressing thing about not the most depressing thing about the story. The, you know, child soldiers and sex slaves are pretty depressing, but the most depressing thing about like the American response is that like it took like a tear-jerking like mini documentary where he like specifically plays on your emotions to like rile up people up enough to like want to do something, right? When like I'm sure you could have found articles about Kony before that. Like I'm sure the internet existed. You could have found articles.
And
like
it's this whole thing of like nobody is talking about this issue, and it's like yes, people are. It's just like this isn't news that's being spread in the U.S. because there's other things that we need to like. There's things going on in the US that are happening in our daily news that we're learning about. Like, I don't know, people always have this very like nobody's talking about the issues in this other country, and it's like actually like everyone who lives in that country is, and like surrounding countries and you know like the UN and humanitarian like groups are definitely talking about and doing things. It's just like not in the US and Western lexicon because like, why would it be? And not saying we don't need to know about these things, but just like, we're not going to be tapped into every single thing that's happening
all the time.
And if we would like to be, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and I just don't think like if you try to like keep up on all the news all the time, like you're going to want to kill yourself.
I mean, as
like,
we've said this a million times, like there's just no way to keep up with all of these things. And I think that like, wanting to affect change in other places where horrible things are happening is fantastic, but is a very like wishful thinking. Love you as like an individual, you know, person who's not like a lawmaker or a change maker. And I think that like the most effective way that you can make change and feel like you're actually like helping somebody is like go give somebody a meal who's living on the street, or you know, lobby and rally at your lawmakers here to like make school lunch free and things like that. Like that's where you will actually be able to make and see effective change. And like the problems of the world, while yes, we should all be very worried about the many things that are going on, it's just not effective. Clearly, I mean, we can see it's not effective for us to be like making documentaries about another country.
And it's like, and if you do
issues we know nothing about.
Yeah,
Sorry, go.
No, it's like, and if you do want to, like, if you really feel inspired to like help another country, like you should do something that's like actually meaningful. Like I always say, like if you really feel the need to like assist an impoverished country, like donate to Doctors Without Borders.
Right.
Like that's a great organization that actually provides medical care to people.
Yes. Like that's one that you can pretty much be like feel good about doing. Yeah.
Like you don't like, and again, I think it just comes from like our background of like short-term mission trips and like white people going to like impoverished countries and taking Instagram photos with black kids. Like where it's like there's definitely things you can donate to and ways you can help that don't involve like you're like being a white savior. And as Phoebe was saying, support your own community as well. You know, like there's lots of things you can do, but definitely look into it first. I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, we're guilty of doing it here with our own like native people here, where we go and we do these like Christian people's mission trips, when it's like you could just like give money to Navajo Nation, you know?
Yeah, just help them.
Things like that. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for listening, folks.
Cool. Yeah.
If you wanna
plugs,
if you wanna follow our Instagram, it's at Remarks Podcast. If you want to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or I think you can also leave a review on Spotify.
I think so.
Is that right? I think you can leave like stars, maybe comments.
Probably.
If you want to do that, do that. Taylor.
If you would like to tweet at us, it's at RemarksPod on Twitter.com. You can find my personal music at Taylor Lacey and my personal Twitter at Vegetable Trash.
At Phoebes Elise.
Yeah, so tweet at us like our personal ones. We're pretty funny sometimes.
We are. I also
my Twitter names are always pretty funny.
Your Twitter names are very funny. I also have been hearing a lot about the new like Blue Sky or Blue Ski or whatever it's called. It's the like new version of Twitter that's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll make the crossover, but you know, once more information comes out about that, I guess we'll let you guys know.
Yeah, we'll see. For sure. Yeah, I think my current Twitter name is Foster's Home for Imaginary Thems.
Amazing. So good.
Which I thought was really good. And yeah, definitely big thanks to our patrons.
We have
I don't have them pulled up yet.
Sol Tarot going off the cuff.
Justin Vass.
Andrew Vass.
Emily Doran.
And Eden.
Woo!
We love you guys. Thanks for everything.
I think that's it.
I think that's everything. Beautiful. Thanks for listening, and K love you. Bye.